Well, I want us to think for a minute about this scripture, so well read by our kindergartner. Jesus took with him 3 people to the top of that mountain: James, John, and Peter. Why did he do that? Why would he take just those 3? We know there were at least 9 others because we're sort of accustomed to think of them as the original dozen, although there were likely many more disciples down on the plain. But he took only 3 with him. Why? They were the first that he called. Remember the story? He's walking along the beach. This is my Jesus walk. Not walking on water, walking on the beach. And I see a boat with 2 people on it. And I say to them, will you come and follow me? And they, Simon and Andrew at that point, well, Andrew always, Simon at that point, later known as Peter, they get up and they follow him. How many of you would do that? Yes, I'm a scientist. I would like to have a list of reasons. I would like the answers to be completely factual, and I would like to know exactly and precisely where I was going and why I was going. But these 2, they just got up and followed. James and John, next boat down. Same thing. They got up and they followed. And so I'm inclined to think these original disciples had something that Jesus saw. Now, what you would see is 2 fishermen who stunk of fish, who were dirty and grubby, and not hardly the kind that you would want to elevate into high ministry. I imagine if your pastor came in the first day that she came to you, and she was dirty and crumpled and rumply and could barely put 2 coherent words together, you might want to rethink whether or not she should stay with you. But this was not the case with Jesus. They weren't much more than sort of fish-cut dripping black smudges when he saw them. But he saw in them something that could change the world. And that's rather remarkable. How often do we see that in people? How often do we notice it? But Jesus knew who they could be, what they could do, and that these 4 people would give up everything, no questions asked, and follow. Remarkable, just remarkable. Even when I first thought about the idea of living a scientific life, I wasn't quite sure, surrounded as I was by that flighty dancer and that creative thinker. I thought perhaps I was misunderstanding myself and asked a lot of questions before I finally headed in that direction. But these disciples did not. Now, you see, it's a funny thing about black smudges. They can be so much more than they seem. This one is actually a lot more than a fake mustache gone wrong. It hatched out of little eggs that look like pieces of corn. And our scientist was nice enough to put the dime in so that we could see the relative size of that which they hatched out of. So that little tiny black smudge appeared. But that little tiny black smudge did not remain a smudge for long, as it grew first into this next photo. Oh, look, it has color. It's already rather beautiful. But that's not the end of it. Let's see what comes next. Oh, wait, before you go. Can you see here and here how it has shed that original black skin so this beauty could come through and we could see more of what it really is? Amazing. All right, now, in the next slide, we see this as they are growing bigger and bigger. Look how the colors have changed and how beautiful it is. Wouldn't you love to have those? That you could have like a little garden of them. You wouldn't need flowers. You could just have those. All right, go to the next one. And they keep growing, and look at these spikes that pop out. Now, who would think of that? Would you, would any of you think of putting spikes on that pretty caterpillar? As far as we know, they don't serve a particular purpose except to make us very curious about why they're there and rather in awe. Let's go to the next slide. Even a better picture of the colors developing as this caterpillar grows. Hungry little beast that it is. Now, one more slide. This is my most favorite. My most favorite, and I give great thanks to Igor for letting me use his photo. It is truly his name. And I don't want to sound crude or anything, but when you go on his site and you see the photographer himself, well, that's worth looking at just all by itself. I'll just say that. So there we have it, the punk rock psychedelic version of the Coletta silk moth, which is what this is. Now, wouldn't you love to have that? I've heard it said that this caterpillar is what would happen if God and Jackson Pollock got together to design one. Because who else would possibly have imagined something so dramatic, so beautiful? Now, look at these little things right here. Can you see? They're just like these little squishy things that help it hold on to that twig. I think that's remarkable. I think of it as like, what is it you call that sport on the ice here? Something hockey? Those little, I think of it as the squishy ones of those. That they have their little claws that grab onto it and hold on to it. I just think it's marvelous. I just think it's marvelous. But if that caterpillar remains in this stage, if we hoard up a bunch of them and place them in our butterfly garden, but we don't provide the material needed for them to spin cocoons, what will happen? They will die. They will not become what they were made to be. We can't just grab onto this colorful, beautiful creature and try to keep it as it is. It has a destiny, and it will go toward it. So let's see the next slide. So as you can see, it does what it must do, which is what? Spin a cocoon. Go to the next one. Just continuation of it spinning, and to the next one. You see that cocoon begins to take shape now, until finally you get that. Now, someone I read described this cocoon as a little lunch sock attached to a branch. Now, what do you suppose will come out of this cocoon?